Hello and welcome. I'm Carolyn Grimminger with the Public Affairs Forum of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Austin. Our program's mission is to nourish mind and spirit and serve social justice. Our forums occur on most Sundays at noon and are free and open to the public. We encourage you to attend. Our church is physically located at 4700 Grover Avenue in Austin, Texas. For more information about our Public Affairs Forum, you can go to our church website at www.austinuu.org. Today we have two speakers who are going to be talking about their organization, Capital City Village. Our two speakers are Linda Keeling and Tom Knutsen. Linda has been a resident of Austin for 50 years. She retired from a career in media, KLBJ, AM/FM, West Austin News, Austin American Statesman, and the Austin Community Newspapers. She also has a residential and commercial realtor's license. She's been a classroom teacher and an antiques dealer, so a lot of interests and abilities. Her education was at Baylor, Hardin-Simmons, Abilene Christian, and the University of Texas. Volunteer roles include Junior League, Community Theater, Neighborhood Board, Civil Rights and Political Campaigns, the Symphony League, Municipal Board, AISD Committee, and Capital City Village. She has 2 sons and 5 grandchildren. Tom Knutsen has been a volunteer for community groups that help seniors remain in their homes since his retirement from the LCRA. He's been a volunteer driver for Drive a Senior West Austin and represents Cherrytown United Methodist Church on its board. For 3 years, he served as its treasurer before taking on the role for Capital City Village. In addition to helping seniors, Tom and his wife, Caroline, read with youngsters at Blackshire Elementary School in East Austin. Earlier in life, he was a beat reporter for 3 different daily newspapers in Texas and an Army intelligence officer. He and his wife, Caroline, have 2 adult children and 3 grandchildren in Ohio and Massachusetts. Let's welcome our speakers.
Thank you. Thank you all, and thank you for having us here today. It's an honor to be at this organization, and this particular church has a special meaning for us in our family. My wife's father died suddenly in 1969. He was a philosophy professor at UT, and the philosophy department held his memorial service here. And I didn't know about this until after my mother-in-law died and I was cleaning up her stuff. And the service that they gave was a compendium of crackerjack writing by some of the brightest people in Austin. And then 3 years ago, you all were kind enough to let us use your church congregation for my wife's mother's memorial service. So this is a special place for us. Now I'm going to talk today about aging in Austin. Now one of the first things that I always think about with Austin is that we are so hip, right? I mean, this is the hippest place there is. We're so hip, we have taken our number one problem, which is tax, turned it into an anagram, and we don't even call ourselves Austin, we call ourselves ATX. I mean, that's about as hip as you can get. And so when you want to have fun, you go out and you buy a wristband, and you spend a lot of money, you get a wristband, and it guarantees you're going to go have some fun someplace, right? Now, I've never bought one of those, but I know people who have. But I've noticed something, and that's that you can't buy a wristband for a comfortable old age. Aging, as most of us know, after we get to be a certain point, whatever it is, wherever you are, becomes increasingly difficult as more and more different parts of your body take a vacation daily, right? I told my son one time that when you hit 50, your body joins a French labor union, and you spend the rest of your life managing each day with one part on strike. Now, I'm going to talk about Capital City Village because we're a virtual community. We don't exist as a brick and mortar institution. We do have an office, a little space over in the AGE building, but we're not a brick and mortar organization. We are people who stay in our own homes and bond together almost like a cooperative to help each other age gracefully in our houses. The special sauce of our organization is social engagement. I'm going to say that again. Our special sauce is social engagement. I'm going to come back to that in just a few minutes. The organization began in Beacon Hill when people in apartments in the Beacon Hill community in Boston noticed that they were becoming isolated and in their own apartments and in their own little section of town. So they formed together and started the notion of getting together to discuss things, to have coffee, gatherings, and discuss the things that they were interested in. And that's how the village movement started. It'll be 16 years ago this year. It started in 2002, and last year we celebrated the 15th anniversary, and our intent was to have, a little bit later in the year than this, in mid-February, we were going to have a birthday party celebration with the surgeon, writer Atul Gawande, whose book, Being Mortal, is a bestseller. Gawande, who teaches and practices at Harvard Medical School, was going to talk about aging, as in his book. However, there was a threat of a terrible storm that particular day. Boston Public Library, where this was going to be filmed, was shut down, and so we celebrated, but we saw the film, his webinar, in September. And that's the way we celebrated our founding, is with this great intellect and very caring man talking about aging and the processes of aging. We got started here when one of a retired physician in Austin read an article in the New York Times about the Beacon Hill Village. He shared it with a friend who's a social worker, and out of that casual conversation in one newspaper article, gradually we put together our capital city village, starting in about 2009, and we opened up and became an organization officially with members and activities in 2011. So this year we'll be 7 years old. I'm going to introduce our president, Sally Van Sickle. She's going to talk just a little bit here on the screen, and then I'm going to follow her.
Did you know that Austin, Texas, the city we love for its great vibes and innovative spirit, is also home to the second fastest growing population of seniors in the nation? Most seniors express a strong desire to age in place. However, many find it difficult to remain independent and stay engaged in their community as their needs change over time. Capital City Village, a local grassroots nonprofit, helps seniors age well at home by offering volunteer services, including transportation and household help, as well as social and informational programs and referrals to trusted service providers. Find out how you can help support seniors in Austin. Contact Capital City Village about volunteer opportunities, making a donation, and membership options for seniors at all income levels. Your support of Capital City Village helps make Austin a great place to live at any age. For more information, visit our website at capitalcityvillage.org. Thank you.
As Sally said, we're engaged in an awful lot of, a wide variety of activities. We have some standard monthly meetings. And we're split between north and south because it's hard for people to get across the river. Does anybody notice that? There's sometimes the day you can't get there from here. So the south people have their parties, we have ours. We meet once a month for a happy hour at La Mancha over on Hancock. We meet at Russell's Bistro on 35th Street near Jefferson Square for coffee on the second Thursday morning of every month. And then in between, members have cooked up their own activities. We have a domino group, we have a bridge group. There's a group in South Austin that gets together to listen to TED Talks and to discuss them. So we come up with our own ideas. We also provide a lot of services to our members. We have members who are physically fit and vital and do all kinds of stuff, and they donate their time and resources to help people who are less able. And we've helped people with housework, yard work. We offer a lot of we do a lot of driving in members who no longer drive. And as an example, I'll just give you some rather tedious statistics, but I think they tell something because we're a small group of about 110 members and 80 households. And out of that, last year, our volunteers, some members, some not, reported 1,583 hours of outreach for 1,227 assignments. That's a lot of work done by a small number of people. Now, the value of a volunteer's time in Texas now is $25.15. And that means that our direct service to our members amounted to $40,400 in actual time in terms of dollars. In the last 2 years, we've opened up a special program internally we call Village Connections. It's funded by a grant from the Kosmetsky family's RGK Foundation. And in that, we have direct outreach to members who are of higher need. Some people who aren't well, people who have difficulty with certain kinds of activities in their lives, We have an assigned social worker who helps with those people, and we have volunteers who are trained to do specific things for them. An example of the kind of thing somebody can do, I learned this from one of our volunteers Friday, is they will go with people when they have medical appointments and listen while the doctors talk with our member, take notes so that the person, our member, will not be confused and will have a good record of what happened with the doctor. Now that matters to me because, as Carolyn said, I'm also a volunteer with Drive a Senior West Austin and have been for a long time. Not long ago, I drove one of our clients to a gastroenterologist, and she has to have a couple of oscopies the same day. That makes sense, endoscopy, colonoscopy at the same time. Unfortunately, we can't sit with people in those circumstances. Those of you who've had one of these know that you have to have a family member, somebody present, a responsible person present, to pay attention to what the doctor says to you when you're coming out of the fog. Because when you're coming out of the fog, what do you hear? You hear, you're like, well, I wonder what that doctor told me. So we can't do that under the HIPAA regulations, but Capital City Village volunteers can do that. Well, I was concerned about this woman. I don't know how we're going to resolve this for her. She does have a family member in town, and she might be able to get her daughter to go with her. So I called another nonprofit, Family Elder Care, for whom I have a great deal of respect, and asked if its volunteers can provide that kind of service. And the answer I got was, yes, we can, but we charge for that. Now, I don't know where the money goes. So Family Elder Care will have a volunteer drive you to a place like the doctor, but it will charge you $19.50 an hour, and you have a minimum of 4-hour commitment for that driver, and it assesses 56 cents a mile. Now, when you put that to a pencil to that, you're coming $78 for just the basic service and then 56 cents a mile. You can spend $100 going to the doctor. And I think that's a pretty high cost. We are a membership organization. We are in a financial situation, fortunately, that we can subsidize some of our members' dues, and we have people who pay $100 a year to be in our organization. They can get all the rides they want. That's a huge difference. I'd never really known how much value we offered people, excuse me, until I heard Family Elder Care's charge. Now, what about that special sauce? I'm here with you all, and I know that you all are an engaged community, and you're especially engaged, and that's why you're here this afternoon. Social engagement is a very significant part of people having not only living long, but living long well. The longest running study on aging is a project that Harvard started with sophomores in 1938. It's still going on. There are still some people from that group who are alive, about 20. An interesting sidebar is 2 people that we know of were in that group, and they were President John Kennedy and the Washington Post editor Ben Bradley. We're both part of that initial group. And they've been studying these people's lifespans as they've gone through all the different kinds of things Harvard graduates could go through in their lives. And the man who's running the organization that study now wrote, "The surprising finding is that our relationships and how happy we are in our relationships has a profound effect on our health." And the headline for their study, when you look at it online, is called "Good Genes Are Nice, but Joy is Better." And in that study, they have found that there are people in this group who've done very well and made a lot of money. There are people who just kind of stumbled along like ordinary people. Wide variety of economic outcomes in their lives, but the one determinant on living well has been their social engagement. Now recently, there's a very popular TED Talk by a psychologist journalist named Susan Pinker. I first ran across it on Facebook, and we have it posted on the Facebook screen for Drive a Senior West Austin. She talks about social engagement. She wrote a book called, I love the name of it because I'm a villager, she calls it The Village Effect. And it's about the importance of social engagement and having a network of friends and a social support group as we go along through life. And she, in her talk, she kind of dismisses those things that people thought would be predictors of life, long life, including exercise and not smoking, blah, 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 blah. But the number one is being engaged, as you all heard today. Now, I'm a member of a Sunday school class. I just came from church, had early church service. Normally I go to late service. My wife sings in the choir, but she's out of town watching our granddaughter in a play in Columbus, Ohio. So I went to early church, and I went to Sunday school. And my Sunday school class at Tarrytown United Methodist Church is called SWIFT, which means Searching and Witnessing in Fellowship Together. And my Sunday school class is very important, not just because we get together and have interesting speakers, and because we help ourselves with our faith journeys, because we all have to struggle with our faith as we go along, and we stumble into life's difficulties. But the difference between what we do at church and what we do at Capital City Village, and there's a large overlap with the people who are in both of those that class and in our Capital City Village group, is that we, at CCV, we really have a purpose. And the purpose is to help people, and to help people stay at home, live in their houses. As one of my friends said, you know, I've been able to help several people die well at home, because she's been a caretaker for people who have gone into terminal illness. Because we have this fund, nobody is turned away on the basis of need. Now, I'm here today to invite you to join us. The door's open. We would love to welcome you into our group. You can find out more about us very easily. Our website is capitalcityvillage.org, all one word. KXAN in December did a Studio 512 program interviewing one of our members, talking about her experience with how Capital City Village has helped her as a single woman get through some difficult times in her life. And then you can go back to NPR, National Public Radio, did a 3-part series on the Village Movement in December also. And that's easy to find. And one of the things that I thought was very interesting in one of those programs, Ina Jaffe was the reporter, is that the City of Chicago Senior Housing Group uses the villages in the Chicago neighborhood as part of its planning for its seniors, because it is recognized that what we do to help each other saves on municipal services and municipal costs. And so it's a component of their long-range planning for seniors. Now, I'm finished. I'm going to introduce my friend L.K. Keeling. She's going to talk about her experience, and I just advise you, don't anybody ask her about Van Cliburn, okay?
Thank you, John. Hi, my name is LK, and that stands for Linda K. My grandchildren call me KK, so I have several different names that I will answer to, and everyone has a story. I know you all have stories, and I want to tell you mine. Some of this information has been covered by Carolyn as well as Tom, but I think it's worth repeating. That is, yesterday, when I was young, I was a volunteer extraordinaire. I volunteered in politics, civil rights, the arts, and education. And about 50 years ago, I moved to Austin. And at that time, I taught school, I sold real estate, commercial and residential, and then I landed a job with the LBJ company, and I was a account executive for KLBJ FM and an account executive for KLBJ AM. And after about 6 years, I married the boss. And what I say about that, because we're all friends here, I should have kept the job. But it was an exciting time. It was a very glamorous time. There was a trip to the White House. There was running around the countryside with, let's say, heavy hitters, and the private plane and trips and so forth. It was a lot of fun. But about 10 years later, I was blindsided by, in all fairness, what can be described as a ugly, nasty, unfavorable divorce. And at that time, I went to work for West Austin News as a reporter and a columnist, and then I went to work as an account executive for the Austin American-Statesman. Due to my advancing years and due to 2 very serious illnesses, I had to retire. And after retirement, things rocked along for a while, okay. I had plenty of friends and activities, but then I began to notice the friends were disappearing. They were getting very involved with their children and their grandchildren. Some friends moved away to be with family. Others remarried and moved away, and sadly, some died. And I noticed that I was spending more time alone and more time with my nose stuck in a book, which is my favorite thing to do. And one day, I got an email from the Dell Jewish Center, which, if you're not familiar with the J, it is such a tremendous asset for our community. Anyway, the email said I was invited to an open house at the J, and it was sponsored by Capital City Village. I had no idea what that meant. But I did read that it's a nonprofit, grassroots, volunteer organization to help support seniors. So I went to the open house, and I was smitten and captivated. There was a talk about the village with some visuals, and I joined right on the spot. But what closed it for me was reading the New York Times article. And I learned the different reasons that people join the village. And some people join because they want more socialization and fellowship in their lives. Others join because they need transportation. And others join at a young age because they want the village to be viable when they're older. Others join to bring their parents. So there are many reasons to join. And there are so many activities. The thing about the village is it has so many levels that I find it rather actually sometimes challenging to describe. But in addition to all the interest groups, the dominoes, the bridge, the yoga, the TED Talks, the mindfulness, the luncheons, there are just so many opportunities. The movies. And the other thing is I want to talk about the volunteers. Many of our members are volunteers, but we have a group of volunteers, some as young as UT students who are not members, but they volunteer for us, and they drive, and they do yard work, and they do chores around the house. And I've met so many interesting people in the village. Interesting people, friendly people, welcoming people. The best way to find out about the village is not to hear us carry on, but is to go to an event. And we're having an event on Wednesday, February the 21st at the Lamar Senior Activity Center between noon and 2. And at that event, Wednesday, February the 21st, noon to 2, Lamar Senior Activity Center, there will be people, members and volunteers for the village, and there'll be refreshments. We all like that. And there'll just be an opportunity to learn more about what we do. And you're invited. And the thing about that is, if you're not interested for yourself, perhaps you have a friend you could bring, or perhaps a relative. And I don't want you to think that we're all old, because we have members in their 50s, as well as we have a delightful woman who's 99 years old, and we have a World War II vet. How old is Stan? 96, 98? He's old, but a lot of fun. And the thing about it is, I mean, the real important thing is to have fun. And we have a lot of fun. And to find out more, I'm going to tell you again about our website. It's very easy to remember because I can remember it. And that is capitalcityvillage.org. And that's, I'm sure, in the information that was passed out to you. Very good. And then the other way to hear the story that Tom referenced about the woman who tells what the village has meant to her, if you will Google KXAN, KXAN, the Jim Spencer station. And you scroll down a couple of articles, you will see, and I want to be sure I say this correctly, helping seniors feel more at home in life. And that will be the 4-minute video, which will feature our member telling how she came to the village and what it's meant to her. And Tom, I probably left out all kinds of important information, but I'm going to let you start the Q&A. And thank you so much for your attention.
I do need to dispel the notion we're just a bunch of old people. One of the ways that we raise money is that in the fall of the last 2 years, we've had a golf tournament. And we attract people literally of all ages. This year was kind of fun. One of our members has a grandson who's a sophomore at Austin High School on the golf team. And he was mixed in there with his grandparents. It was really a lot of fun. And we're intergenerational, and that's a really good example of the kinds of activities we have. And I'm going to talk for a minute about Stan. Stan he's 96 now, but when he was 90, he lives alone at home. He tripped and fell and broke his femur. Now, you don't want to break your femur. And while he was in the hospital and in rehab, members of our organization went into his house, and with the help of one of my friends who's in the business of those devices, assistive devices that help you get around your house when you've been injured. When Stan came home, they'd cleared a path in his house. They'd gotten rid of the obstacle course. A lot of people build obstacle courses in their houses. So they got rid of the obstacle course, cleared pathways from his bedroom to his bathroom and to the rest of the house. And he had a shower bench, he had grab bars in his bathroom, and he had a ramp going from his garage into his house so he could drive and get out of his car and use his walker to get up into the house. Stan's healed now, he's fine. But that's the kind of volunteer work that we do to help people, and that's a very specific story. I'll be happy to try to answer questions. Sir?
If time permits, I have two short things.
Hello, I'm Richard Halpin. I'm a member of this church and a forum committee, and I really appreciate both of your stories about this wonderful organization. Could you summarize for me the kind of services that the network or the organization, the Village Network, provides to people, and the dues or the costs or the membership fees, or how the financing, what your expectations are for members' payments? Thank you.
I'm the treasurer, so I should have the dues absolutely memorized, but a household of 2 people who pays full price pays about $800 a year, so my cable bill is higher than my membership monthly, and we go down to people who pay only $100 a year, so it's quite a wide range. And 25% of our members are on subsidy. Now,
I don't mean to correct you, but the latest is we have 37% of members who receive some kind
of subsidy.
Financial
Right.
aid. Oh, excuse me. Well, here I am just being bossy, but I was just going to say the latest update is 37% of our members receive some type of financial assistance to pay the dues. And then secondly, I just wanted to say really quickly, immediately it saved me, being a member saved me money, because I had been taking a Southwest flight a couple of times a year on the Wanna Get Away fare to Albuquerque, Houston, and Washington, D.C., and I had an early morning flight. And I thought, no one's ever going to, want to take me early in the morning to the airport. But imagine my surprise, a nice couple took me early in the morning to the airport, and right then and there, that saved me $100.
Other services, I talked about Stan. I think that's a very good example of a direct service. One of our members was very active in the community. She was diagnosed with a terminal cancer, and it was very important for her to keep her yard up. So she did as best she could with her plants in her yard, and even while she was dying, we brought in a crew from the University of Texas, a bunch of volunteer kids, who went in, cleaned up her gardens, mulched them, pruned, and kept her house looking good for her as she lay dying. I think that's a good direct service. One of our members would take turns visiting her. We have members who visit each other when they go to Texas Oncology, which is a place nobody wants to go, but some of us have to go there. And I've had the pleasure of driving a few people who've needed to go there myself, and it's that place has impressed me a lot. I've seen people really happy to be there, and the staff there is very welcoming. It's a comfortable place. Is that are those good answers, sir? All right. Thank you.
Jim Bryce, very impressed with what you're doing in your presentation here. Of course, we don't like to use the O word, but that's another story. One of the biggest issues, as we all know, is transportation, and you've mentioned it. And one runs into it, and I've had that with my mother, and most of us have had that one way or another, where there's a desire to continue driving when it's really not safe or appropriate. It appears that you would have services that would really take care of the need. How does one encourage a person to recognize that and begin to use such service?
Well, you've asked me a tough question. The last time I watched my wife's mother drive up Great Northern Boulevard, she was taking evasive action. No U-boat could have hit her with a torpedo. I don't know. No, I know that St. David's has his program, driving testing program. I don't know if you know about that. And one of my friends said to his father, if you can pass the St. David's safe driving program, you can keep driving. But if you don't pass it, you give me the keys. And so that was kind of a challenge to Dad. And that guy took on the challenge. He lost the bet, but he was safe after that. Now, we don't step in to tell people that they're not ready or capable of driving anymore. But we do have people who help people who are in need. And we have some members who, as I said, especially they have more needs than others, particularly people who suffer high anxiety problems. And so we get them to where they need to go.
Thank you so very much. I'm Catherine Ellert, a member of the church. Do you have services in Seguin, Texas? Or would that be out of San Antonio office or organization?
No, we don't. There's the beginning of a couple of other villages, one in Dallas, one in Houston. And the best little village in Texas is in LaGrange, of all places.
We were the first village in Texas. Number one.
So
Yeah, no.
I actually have a question.
Sure.
Might be a good case example of how you guys help. I have a dear friend whose mother couldn't live at home alone anymore. So my friend is a saint, and she loves her mother very much, and she moved her into her home. And my friend more and more is having to miss work. She's in management at my job. So would she be able to contact you and get some kind of assessment to see how she could get assistance? Because she's going to keep her mother in her home as long as possible, but it's becoming more and more clear that she is needing assistance and things like that. So would a person could contact your organization and just talk with you guys? Is
Yes.
that a good example?
Yes, and one of the nice things about us is that we have on our board two licensed social workers, and because it's just a weird thing. My church has more doctors than most countries. If you ever need a doctor, go to the 11 o'clock service at Tarrytown Methodist Church, grunt, grab your chest and fall forward, and there'll be like a horde. It's like fire ants. I don't know why. We've never been able to understand why that is. So we have several doctors also on our board and in memberships, and they have done just that kind of thing. And sometimes we've told people, we told children, we'd love to help, but we think your parents need something more professional than we can offer. But yes, she could do that, and we'd be happy to help.
You mentioned two books, I think, Tom. Right, Tom, is it?
Yes.
Tom? You mentioned two books. One, Mortal Body, I think, was one, and the other one I missed completely. So could you go over those again for me?
Right. Atul Gawande, Gawande. His parents are Indian. They came from India. His father was a physician, and they lived on the Ohio River in a little town named Athens, which is where Ohio University is. So Atul Gawande is an American, born up. He has an Indian name. He teaches on the faculty at Harvard. He's a cancer surgeon, and his book is called Being Mortal. he describes in there how the body ages. The part that I didn't like, I never knew why people get osteoporosis. I mean, I don't understand this. And so he explains that your body starts to leach calcium, your organs, your muscle, your tissue starts to leach calcium as you age out of your bones. And I'm reading this, I exercise regularly, and I thought, now I know why I have trouble stretching. My hamstrings are clay. And then, we talk about programs. We've had already this year, we've had 2 programs. The second Sunday in January, we had a program on end-of-life decisions. We brought in 3 professionals who deal with those kinds of things that you have to make up your mind about. An elder law lawyer talking about wills and how to manage wills and estates. We had a specialist who has a program called Kitchen Conversations, talking about how you talk to your family about what you want to have done while you're dying and what you do with your stuff in your body. And then a person from the Funeral Association in Texas giving us information about how to manage your remains. And of course, their point was, get this done so when you're dying and dead, your family isn't faced with a panic. That was 3 weeks ago. Last week, we had a rheumatologist come talk to us about osteoporosis. And that's a continuum of one of our programs. We've had a number of doctors, we have a lot of meetings with doctors on the matter of aging. And one of the things, because I'm the note taker, one of the things that they've all said, and I'll say it here, they say walk, keep walking, walk some more, and do some resistance exercise. And that's all these different kinds of specialists, including geriatricians. So that's an engagement. We had, I think, 6 different meetings with different kinds of physicians last year on different aspects of keeping your body going aging.
May I add really quickly that all of our events, all of our events are open to the public. So when you go to our website and you look at all the different events, please feel free to join us and bring a friend. And when I was talking about, we have some young people, our new president who you just saw on the screen, she just turned 60. That's pretty young.
Thank you for being here today, Tom. My name's Luther Elmore. And my question is, what is the membership of the group here in Austin? And then what is the membership of the group that you said is so successful in LaGrange? And I would assume from that it is disproportionately larger in LaGrange than here. And so what do you hold their success to? Why have they been so successful there?
I really don't know. I just learned about the LaGrange program about 3 weeks ago. And I would guess that it's I worked for LCRA with electric customers. And in fact, I was at LaGrange the other day just to go eat barbecue because I like the barbecue place there. It's a small town. It's tight. It's a very tight-knit town. Probably the strongest institutions there, unless LaGrange is different from the other towns, would be Sunday school classes. And I would guess that these people got together and bonded outside the First Baptist Church and the First Church of Christ and the First Methodist Church and whatever churches they've got there. But I don't know what made LaGrange succeed and why it got going, and Houston hasn't been able to do it yet. I think about 20. These different groups, now my daughter lives in Columbus, Ohio, and Columbus has a couple of different villages. One is called Clintonville, which is a little suburban part of Columbus north of downtown, and it's a membership of about 60 people. And then there's another one that is more central that is based in the area that is called German Village, and they're happening part of town which is called Short North. And so there's a Short North Germantown community that is much larger, of about 80 people. And they share information, but they work together separately with separate sets of people.
All right, we have about 20 minutes left. Do we have any more questions from the audience? All right.
Oh, he's got a lot of questions. That's good.
Excuse me?
So
He's got a lot of questions.
my question is, you have communities like ours, like this church here, and we have a lot of older, younger people here, and an increasingly amount of older, younger people here. And I wonder if some of the services that you do or you think about doing could also be done with a network of churches who would love to do some of the stuff you do on site. In other words, some of the workshops you do or some of the symposia that you just mentioned you put on. I wonder if you've given any thought to collaborating with a church like ours to do those sort of quarterly or something.
I don't think that, because we're a model of individual households, I don't think that is something that has occurred to us. Drive a Senior was originally called West Austin Caregivers, and it grew out of that idea because somebody looked around and realized that all these different congregations had people who were driving the senior members, older people, individually. So they pooled the resources and formed the West Austin Caregiver Network. And now, I've been on the board for some time. We're a network now of about 14 different Central Austin congregations. They call it West Austin, but West is different from what it was when I moved here. So, it started with the churches on Exposition, and now it includes St. Teresa's, 2 different congregations out of the Jewish Community Center. They've changed their name, but Beth Israel, Agudas Akim. So we're an interdenominational, faith-based group. But as far as the village is concerned, we want our members to come out of this kind of community because this kind of community is the kind of community that has the skill set and has demonstrated the interest to want to reach out and help other people. Does that make sense? Okay. That actually was our sermon today, is help other people. And you all do that. I know that.
Hi, thank you so much. This is really fascinating. My name is Becky Halpin. So what kind of turnout do you have at these small group events like lunches or bridge or something like that if we just decided to, show up and test one out? And do you have a wide variety of, I would say, political stripes in your group so that everybody would feel comfortable, or how would you describe that in terms of your, Democrat, Republican? Do you have a big mix? Do people get along at these things, or do they, sort of divide up into, your pockets of Democratic bridge players and Republican bridge players, or?
What I was going to say, I only heard part of your question, so I will defer to my friend Tom here. But when you asked, I believe, how many people we had at these different events, it just depends. I know that sounds like a political answer, but sometimes the event is full and other times it's smaller attendance. I was going to say that one of the times, as I said, almost all of the events are free, no charge to members or guests. Occasionally there's an event like an in-house concert where there's a small fee so that the musicians can be paid, and then I'm going to let you take the rest of that question.
Oh, I love the question about politics because I'm a Midwestern Republican. I have the finest collection of I Like Ike junk jewelry in my drawer at home that was my mother's, and I've got letters from all kinds of Ohio congressmen thanking my mother and grandmothers for their work for the Republican Party. And that makes me a crazy left-wing liberal in Texas. And so within our organization, Capital City Village, I would say that we cover pretty much the full gamut of political attitudes. And it's like our Sunday school class. Sometimes we just don't discuss politics. It's not important. There are other things. We're there together for a different reason. Jim? Do you have a question? All right.
Well, it's really a follow-up to my earlier question, a mechanical issue with respect to the transportation. Here in Central Austin, we've got the buses and whatnot are improving, I've noticed. But again, we have the situations elsewhere. How mechanically, if a person needs a ride, is it necessary to plan that days in advance, hours in advance? How is that actually handled?
I can take that if you want me to. We're pretty much a volunteer organization, although we have 2 part-time employees. An executive director, who we're very lucky to have because she was executive director at a village in Chicago. and she is an Austin native. And then the farmer director is the volunteer coordinator. So to get a ride, it's a very simple process. People who are online send Bonnie, the volunteer coordinator, a request. We would like to get the request 3 days in advance, but then we have people who can help you with a ride at the very last moment. And so Bonnie posts those requests for rides, and then members and volunteers contact the person needing the ride, and they set it up. So it's a really straightforward, easy process, and of course it is a tremendous advantage. And I was going to say about myself being a volunteer, I signed up to be a driver, and I went to the training because all of our volunteers go through a terrific training, and so I signed up to be a driver. And I took the course and put my name on the list that I would drive people. And then I realized that although I've been driving since I was 13, that I'm a really bad driver. And my car is about 13 years old, and it has a lot of, shall we say, ouchies on it. And so the thing about my driving is I never like to put the car in reverse. I don't know how to parallel park, and I would never do a U-turn. So because there's so much benefit to volunteering, I looked around to think about what I could do, and because of my background in media, broadcast, and print, I volunteered to be in charge of media relations, and that's gone really well. And so the other thing I don't think we've mentioned is we keep a list of vendors who are vetted, who can do services that we don't provide, electrician, plumbing, roofing, that kind of thing. And sometimes those vendors will give our members a discount. But the way to get a ride is really a very straightforward. Oh, and by the way, if a member's not on the internet, they can call Bonnie and request a ride. Thank you for that question.
My name's Max Stout, and I want to get away from politics, but I do want to get into another area, and that is, for instance, people who've been involved in the oil and gas industry in Austin tend to gather together in these groups, but more particularly, alum from Austin High School will get together. And so what I'm wondering is, the group south of the river, are they Travis, Crockett, these high schools alum? In the north, you only have Austin High people alum in the north group. How does it divide up on other divisions in our society?
Well, honestly, I never thought about thinking. I don't have any idea where anybody else went to high school. I grew up in Ohio. Several of our friends grew up in Dallas. They went to schools elsewhere. People have come in from literally all over the country. I don't think that there's a Travis, Lanier, Austin High connection. A lot of guys, people are from San Antonio, other cities in the state of Texas. So that's an interesting question, but it's not something that we ever really discuss unless somebody remembers being in school with someone. Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Larry Courts, and I'm a member of the forum committee. And I noticed you say Capital City Village. Is this a housing area that you have?
No, we live in our own homes. We bond together elsewhere, but we stay in our own houses. We don't have a brick and mortar presence anyplace. It's what we call it a virtual village.
May I say our tagline? We've had several different taglines. We like to say, keep aging weird. We like to say, we're the village people. We like to say, our newest tagline is, I think I can get this, live where you stay, no, that's not it. Stay where you live well where you stay. But I do need to add, although the majority of us still live in our homes, be that an apartment or a condo or a single-family dwelling, we do have members who move on to assisted living or the other levels of retirement village life, and we continue to provide them with services. But the whole concept is to stay in your home. Have you ever heard anyone say, I want to move someplace new and different and unfamiliar? People want to stay in their homes, and we support them in that endeavor. I have business cards which will show you our website. And then also, I want to remind you, Google KXAN and scroll down and see the video about seniors staying comfortably with purpose in their homes. And I guess maybe that's right now all that's in my head.
We have about 10 minutes left, and it looks like we're out of questions. If y'all just have some final remarks.
That's good. Thank you. You all have been very cordial. Thank you very much. And I hope we've answered your questions. Look forward to seeing you again. Come visit us, please.
So what this bill said was essentially you can't shut a school down if they're trying to improve themselves via this model, essentially. And part of that is to have a kind of a community organization to be involved in coordinating a lot of the community coordinator to try to coordinate the parental involvement and the other pieces of it. Well, somewhere along the way, someone notified the lieutenant governor that this was just my way of getting Planned Parenthood into every school in the state of Texas, which I couldn't even in my wildest imagination figure out how you can make that stretch, but nonetheless that was made, that terrible, crazy idea. So I had to spend a lot of time on the House floor to try to get it passed to the House, to get it to the Senate. In fact, I had to go to one of my Republican colleagues, someone that I have a lot of respect for, and say, I want you to file an amendment. And I actually handed it to my colleague and said, please file this amendment that says that Planned Parenthood has nothing to do with this bill.
So at the C40 meeting in Mexico City, the C40 rolled out a new report. It was called Deadline 2020, and it's really about how the cities will get the job done. And that was the name of the report. It talked about things to do, but it started out with a pretty startling set of conclusions, which helped set the tone and the framework for the time that we had together, and set out recommendations. But most importantly, I think it laid out in context the urgency for the work that we had to do. That, quite frankly, it's going to fall on cities to really take the lead.
In Deadline 2020, it states that in reality, we have only 4 years, 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020, before the world will have locked in sufficient atmospheric emissions to exceed 2 degrees Celsius warming.
I grew up with Martin Luther King Jr. as a role model. He was a man that believed that we should all be treated equally. I take inspiration from his words, and I have ever since I was a child. A passage he wrote I think is pertinent to all of us in our lives. I ask you to bear with me as I read it. King said, "We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. Procrastination is still the thief of time. Life often leaves us standing bare, naked, and dejected with a lost opportunity. The tide in the affairs of men does not remain at the flood, it ebbs. We may cry out desperately for time to pause in her passage, but time is deaf to every plea and rushes on."
Somebody who is gay and who doesn't know quite how to come out, one thing you can suggest to them that, okay, maybe one way to come out is to drop hints. In my own case, I see some people I know in the audience, and I think you know this story, but it's kind of fun. So in my case, so I sew, and I make a lot of my own clothes. I made this dress, for example. So before I was out, one year at work, we had a Halloween costume contest. So I decided to make a Pan Am stewardess uniform, and I wore that to work. And that was, well, to say that people were surprised is an understatement.
Elect is supposed to go through a period of learning and training, which in our tradition includes intelligence briefings and consultations with wise elders of government. It also normally entails a solidification of that communitas with fellow members of the victorious party. Neither of these things seems to be going terribly well in the present situation. The designee for the new status is resisting the education and failing to bond satisfactorily with his community. He is also clinging ferociously to his previous status and property and kinship associations. All of the above, I would suggest, does not bode well for the third stage, the aggregation or incorporation into the new status, as traditionally defined by our culture, and this is due to occur in less than 2 weeks.
I'm a sort of average-sized adult male. Growing up, I had been very short, very skinny, and very effeminate in traditional terms. I was the kid who spent most of his time working not to get beaten up. I was the kid who clearly was never going to be a real man. So I had a stake in trying to understand the politics of those gender norms. And so feminism spoke to me fairly quickly once I got past the distortions about it. But what's interesting is the more I worked on feminist projects and talked to men, the more I realized that virtually all men, maybe all men, literally all men, at some point in their lives feel like they aren't man enough. That even the quintessential high school quarterback, prom king, good-looking, athletic guy, even the guy who seemed to meet the very rigid gender norms in masculinity in a patriarchal society, even that guy was racked by a kind of insecurity about not being man enough.